Hi guys, this is Bison, your host, and today you are about to witness why Mikhail Tal was considered one of the most dangerous attacking players in chess history. This isn't a game where Tal, just wins one flashy combination. He slowly squeezes his opponent, creates weakness everywhere, and then finishes the game with a beautiful tactical blow. Let's get started. Okay, so game starts with d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, a typical East Indian defense, knight to f3. And usually black continues with d5, which structure looks like Queen's Gambit declined, but instead Tal pushes c5. And the idea behind this move is not to let white establish a strong pawn chain. And guys, this complete setup is known as Benoni defense. Okay, so now Rafael advances the d pawn further. Tal takes on d5, c takes d5, and after that g6, preparing for bishop to g7. Now Rafael develops his another knight on c3, bishop to g7, bishop to f4, preparing to push d6. So to tackle this, Tal can just advances his d pawn further, but instead he decides to push a6, covering the b5 square so that white pieces can't enter. And in the future, he can anytime go for the queenside attack. Okay, so now Rafael strikes in the center with e4, preparing to push e5. So to stop this, black can either consider the move d6, but instead Tal focuses on development. I mean, he decides to castle. And here white can either push the pawn, or maybe he can consider bishop to d6. But instead he develops his bishop to e2. And finally Tal plays d6, which also opens the diagonal for his light square bishop. Now a4. Here Rafael expands on the queen side. Tal brings his bishop to g4, targeting the knight. And now just h3, attacking the bishop. So Tal takes on f3, bishop takes f3, and then queen to c7. A flexible move supporting the e5 square, which is a key outpost for the knight. Second, it eyes the c5 pawn that white is planning to push further. And most importantly, it clears the d8 square for the rook, which can eventually come in the game. And finally, Rafael castles. And now Tal develops his another knight on d7, preparing to bring his knight either on b5 or maybe on b6. So to stop this, Rafael pushes a5. But after that, Tal brings his rook on e8, queen to d2. And now Rafael connects the rooks, preparing for the kingside attack, but rook at a goes to c8. And you can see he wants to push c4 so that he can gain some space, restricting white pieces as well as creating long-term pressure. g4 by Rafael, preparing to push g5. But guys, here black can consider this amazing move, which is knight to e5, attacking the bishop. And let's say if this bishop goes to g2, then knight to c4, attacking the queen. And if this queen goes to d3, and guys, as you can see now, white has option to either capture on b2 and or a5. And guys, if you are thinking to capture the pawn on b2, that will be a mistake, because yes, black is now targeting the queen, but after queen to b2, e2, you can see now this knight is trapped. So that's why after queen to d3, here the best move is to capture the pawn on a5, and you can see what's coming next. So let's say if white continues with e5, if he tries to take the knight, then takes d6. If he plays d6, attacking the queen, but we can play c4, counter attacking, and takes, rook takes a5, e takes f4, bishop takes b7, let's say, then rook takes c7, attacking the bishop, so bishop takes a6, and finally d2. And when the dust settles, you can see this position is better for black due to this advanced d pawn, and in the next move, rook to e1 is coming. But in the game, after the move g4, let me go back, here Tal goes for rook to e7, and guys, that's a great move. And basically he's preparing for knight to e5, but before that he played rook to e7 so that he can defend the 7th rank. because after knight to e5 and then the variation which I showed you, I mean after completing that, there might be a chance that white pieces can infiltrate to the 7th rank or maybe to the king side. So that's why Tal played this move earlier, so that he can defend the king side, and now he's ready for the attack. Okay, so now Rafael brings his rook to e1 and you can see what he's preparing for. So that's why Tal brings his knight to e8 and then bishop to e2. He repositions the bishop to a safer square where it supports the king side and keeps an eye on the important long diagonal. Rook to b8 and you can see Tal wants to expand on the queen side. Bishop to g5. He targets the rook, but bishop to f6. Bishop takes f6, knight takes f6. And you can see now, Tal brings his knight again. And after that, Rafael strikes with f4. He launches a pawn march. But Tal pushes c4, which is a good move, restricting the d3 square so that this queen can't enter. King to h1. He just slides his king so that he can, get away from any check like, queen to c5. But guys, in this position, now black can play knight to c5 with the idea of knight to b3. But after king to h1, here Tal goes for knight to e8. And now in this position, white can consider e5. The idea is after d takes e5, knight to e4. And you can see what's coming next. So let's say if he brings his queen back, then d6, attacking the rook. And after, let's say, rook goes to e6, f5. I mean, just look at the pawns. I mean, they are just ready to shatter the defense of black king. And clearly you can see this is winning for white. Okay, so in the game, after knight to e8, here Rafael goes for rook to a4. And basically he wants to, put some pressure over this pawn. But b5, Tal just attacks the rook. And here, Rafael just en passant. Rook takes b6 and then rook at e goes to a1. He just builds some pressure over the a6 pawn. And but Tal is like, no bro, he just brings his queen to b8 and now he is building pressure on the b2 pawn. So that's why here white defends with rook to a2. But then knight to c5. I mean, Tal is just monster. I mean, he's just bringing all of his pieces to attack. Rook takes c4. Rook at e goes to b7. I mean, now the pressure is immense. And now white can defend this with the knight to d1, but e5. I mean, Rafael just shows no interest, which gives a chance Tal to, just captures on b2. Rook takes b2, rook takes b2, and then queen to d4. Yeah. So now rook to c2. And you can see in the next move, queen to b2 is coming with the idea of rook takes g2. So in this position, white can consider rook to b4, which targets the queen. But instead, he decides to grab on d6 and then queen to b2. Tal just brings his pieces. d7. He attacks the knight, but knight takes d7. And guys, now the question is, how can white defend in this position? And guys, there are two ways. The first one is bishop to f1. And the idea is now even black gives a check from h2 square, then king to g1. And you can see now there is no way for white to give another check because this f2 square is covered by the queen and the g2 square is covered by the bishop. And let's say if he tries to attack the queen by rook to d2, then queen to e3. I mean, what to say? Attacking the knight. And guys, here is the only best move for black, which is to bring this queen to b6, trying to exchange the queen, because let's say if he plays any move like knight at e goes to f6, that will be a mistake, because first of all, white is going to play knight to f4, which attacks the knight, breaking the coordination. And after queen to a2, g5, attacking the knight again. And if knight to h5, rook to c8 check, knight to f8, and then queen to c5, putting more pressure over the knight. And you can see this is completely winning for black. And the another possibility, so another possibility for white is, let's say after knight takes d7, he can consider the move which is knight to d1. I mean, attacking the queen, as well as simultaneously asking for queen exchange. And let's say if black declines and he just slides his queen to a2, then rook to a4, attacking the queen, and after queen to b3, rook takes a6, and in the next move, white can play rook to a8 with the idea of going to e3. So to save this game, black is now forced to exchange the queens. So, but in the game, after knight takes f7, and guys, in this position, Rafael, made a huge blunder, and he plays rook to c8. He directly attacks the knight, but the problem with that move is, in this position, the final move by Tal is rook takes g2. And in this position, Rafael Vaganian resigned. This is because, let's say if white captures the knight with rook takes e8 check, then knight to f8, and you can see now mate in 2 is coming. So to stop this, let's say if white tries to be fancy, if he decides to capture the knight, so that he can give some multiple checks like queen to h8, king to e7, queen to e5 check. But the point is, after king to d7, now you can see there is no way for white to give some checks. And if knight to e2, if he tries to break the coordination, then simply rook takes e2. And if queen takes b2, rook takes b2. Yeah, that's all. What a game by Mikhail Tal. The way he slowly built up the pressure and then finished the game with a beautiful tactical blow was simply incredible. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.